Hi, it's Manveen. Today we've got something a little different for you. If you're a regular listener to the story, then you'll have heard Luke and I speak to the Times crime correspondent David Woode on topics like stop and search and knife crime. Well, we're handing him the reins today so that you can hear an in-depth interview he's done with a teenager who was recently convicted of possessing a knife, as David tries to understand why he felt the need to carry one.
From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm David Woode. Reporting on murders, serious assaults and robberies make up a big part of my job as the crime correspondent. Most weeks, you'll find me on the press bench in court, seeing a murder suspect in the dock or hearing evidence of a victim's final moments before they were killed. Every day, I receive alerts when a stabbing is reported in England and Wales. And I'll be honest, I can't tell you how many I've reported on since joining the Times almost 3 years ago. While in court, I noticed patterns in the cases I covered. The knife attacks were increasingly violent and frenzied. The blades were becoming longer and more terrifying. And in London, most of the defendants were black, and many were under 18. I was often struck by how young they looked as they gazed around the dock. In evidence, many of them said that they carried a knife for protection, but they couldn't articulate why they were scared. Last year, I began reporting on knife crime in depth, and with the help of colleagues, analysed a decade's worth of data in England and Wales. I spoke to ministers, senior police officers and youth workers, but I wanted to hear from the people behind the figures. How can we really understand how to tackle this if we don't understand the drivers? And what makes a young person pick up a blade? So, I've sat down with a 19-year-old man who was recently imprisoned for carrying a knife, to get a rare insight into what some young people are facing in London, and why he felt he had to arm himself with a deadly weapon. The story today, why I carried a knife. All right, so we just want you to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And talk as if you're having a conversation with me. So just ignore the lights, ignore the mics. Talk to me, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in the Times office with a young man who we're calling Marcus. He's polite, a bit shy, but with a quiet confidence, and he wants to share his story. This is the first time he's spoken publicly about his experiences. Marcus was born and raised in London. He's close to his family, so much so that his mum has come along with him today to meet me. But his father wasn't around much for his childhood.
Growing up, the people around the home, that was my mum and my two sisters. One's older than me, one's younger than me. Mum always doing what she can, doing her best to provide for, my siblings, myself also. And obviously I had to play my role as older brother as well.
How did your father's absence affect you?
I don't think you see how the absence of a father would affect you until you realise how you're supposed to act as a man when you get to a certain age. When it comes to small things, let's say, for example, anger. I've been trying to contain my anger for a long time. I'm not no crazy person or whatever, but, we all have our limitations to certain situations. And I think with the anger, with a male around in the house, he would have been able to teach me how to control my anger as a man. But because that was absent, I learned how to control my anger from a woman's perspective. And that, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but we literally operate completely different. So that's just one small fragment, I guess, that you can see the implications if it's had on my life, not having a father around.
The impact of an absent father is, understandably, a sensitive issue, but it's often hinted at in some of the cases I've covered. When a defence barrister is arguing for a more lenient sentence for their client, you'll often hear details of their chaotic childhood and how their parents' separation had affected their actions. Without his father around, Marcus looked elsewhere for male role models. He admired the American basketball star Kobe Bryant for his work ethic, and was also supported by a mentor at school who worked with the charity St. Giles Trust. But mostly, he found solidarity with other boys he knew.
I was lucky enough to have boys my age experiencing the same kind of thing. So because we were all experiencing the same absence of a father in our lives, we basically looked to each other. So it kind of sounds silly, but when you don't have anything, what you have is what you have. So it was mostly, people my age, what they do, I'll do, what I'll do, they'll do. And then we just learned from there, really.
As he grew up, Marcus felt the absence of a male role model at home.
I was pressured. Well, not obviously pressured, but pressured by myself to be the man of the house, because without a father figure, someone's got to fill that role.
Why did you feel that pressure? At what age?
As young as I can really remember, like 12, 11.
What pressure were you under at 12?
The most pressure I can really think of is materialistic-wise. So, like money, for example. Obviously, my mum done her best. I'm not dissing my mum in any way, but there's a handful of things that she couldn't do.
Such as?
My mum's, she's not actually from this country. So that was one limitation that she's had, getting certain jobs or certain benefits that other people would have growing up in this country. So with the limitations to money, there's a certain amount of things that she can't do. So for me, the main things was birthdays. She wasn't able to get certain things, for my little sister. She'll cry and stuff like that. And like, when I saw a route that I could take to be more financial, it kind of closed all the other roles I'm supposed to take on as the man of the house, and I only focused on the financial part, which led to a lot of bad decisions later on down the line.
Marcus was only just reaching his teenage years, but decided that he needed to find a way to make money. It was at this point his life took a turn.
When you're like 10, 11, you ain't got a clue what you want to do. Or some people say astronauts or whatever, but I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to accomplish in life. So I took to the streets, and in the streets, there's only certain things that you can do to get what you need. And that's either selling something or doing something to someone else to get something out of it.
What do you mean by that?
I was selling what I needed to sell, basically. My morals were still the same. I saw it as, I don't want to do this, but I'm doing this because I want to benefit my family. So that was my ethics behind it.
It was around the time when Marcus, quote, took to the streets, that knives began to enter his life. When you were that age, were you aware that some of your peers were carrying knives?
Oh, yeah, of course. They were my friends. Of course, they're going to tell me about it. I remember the first time my friend came to school with a knife. He told me he had it on him. And I was just a bit in shock, really, because, like, I'm not in shock with the fact that it's a knife and you have it. It's you have it. And you're so close to me. And it's like, if you need it and you think you need it, then I might need one, because, like, we're going through the same thing. We walk the same path home, you know what I mean? If you're stressing and you think you need the knife, then I might need one. And that's where it kind of really started. It's not peer pressure, but it's like, I'm not too sure what the word is. You know what I mean?
And so around that time, you say you felt you had to carry a knife.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first carried a knife?
I was 14, 15.
How did you get the knife?
I had bought it off someone online. It was via Snapchat. I just got through to him and just hit him up. And that was it.
How much did you pay?
25 pound for a fillet knife, 25 pound.
You see, this is an area where, like, policing is really cracking down on. They call it the grey market.
Yeah.
So if you buy a knife online from a retailer, they'll have to have two-step verification. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that policing is very concerned about is this grey market where people are bulk buying knives and then selling them on Snapchat, on encrypted messaging groups.
Yeah.
Did you know where to go looking for it?
But yeah, it's not hard, like as hard as people may think. It's like a tap of a finger you can find some sort of, weaponry on Snapchat.
Can you remember the first day you did it?
Yeah, when I got it, I was heading home. I took the bus with my friend. And yeah, man, my heart was racing the whole time. I thought police were going to run on the bus and, just being paranoid. And then I got home, I headed under my bed. And yeah, that was the first day done, really. It was, overwhelming a little bit, but I felt safe. I was just scared of the police.
You felt safe because you had it?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you can feel that safety.
Was there any sense that safety could translate as danger, like it was dangerous having it?
Not really, because it's my first time. I haven't ever used it. In that time, I'm just thinking, someone pulls out a knife on me, I can pull out a knife on them. Maybe I might get them scared. They might run away, you know what I mean? But if I don't get them scared, at least I have a fighting chance. It just felt like an extra layer of security, I guess.
So Marcus started carrying a knife he'd bought on Snapchat when he was only a schoolboy. In his eyes, he saw it as a necessary part of life on the streets.
Even if you just want to sell what you want to sell to whoever you want to sell it to, there's other people in the same area doing the same thing as you. And then it's kind of like competition, business competition, rivalry, I guess, yeah. All because of greed, basically. They think you're taking what they've built or you're interrupting with what they have going on. And it takes up time as well because now you have to defend yourself in certain situations or you may get into altercations. With me, for example, I had a specific number in mind. And when I hit this number, I was going to stop doing what I'm doing. But because of this main factor here, the rivalries that came with the route that I took, it slowed down the process and I ended up getting in a loop.
What was the loop? What was the cycle?
The cycle.
That was hard to break.
So, obviously, everything everyone does comes down to, like, their mind, how they operate, and the reasons to why they do it. So with me and with a lot of people who were obviously my age and ended up in the same situation, their main reasoning behind this was money. So when you're money-driven, especially in the streets as well, when you're money-driven, there's a lot of things that hold you back because the only thing you see is money. So, for example, if I'll use the exact same example as before, I was selling what I was selling in whatever area, and then there's people who don't like what I'm doing because they're doing the same thing, and then that's the rivalry, it starts from there. But because I love money so much and the money that I'm making is nice, it would hurt my pride for me to just walk away and find another place. So I stay in that same place. I say, I'm not going to leave what I've built just because someone else doesn't like it. So then now you contest with the rivalry, and however long that's going to take to die down, if it even dies down, that's the start of the loop. It starts with money and then violence gets involved. And then once violence gets involved, there's, obviously as men, there's certain violations that you can't just turn your back from.
Like?
For example, if your friend gets hurt by a rival, you can't just leave your friend and say, oh, it's okay, we'll deal with it later or however. Because once you let that be okay and it's known to everyone else that that's okay and you let it be okay, you're now known as, you're not a serious person.
This is something I've come across in my reporting. A code of honour where teenage boys and young men balk at the idea of being disrespected because of the perceived harm to their reputation.
So then now you just end up clashing with these people over and over again. And it's just because you didn't have the pride to walk away from a situation. You needed revenge. But then after your actions, now you're stuck in a loop of trying to deal with your consequences. But when you get arrested with a knife and the judge just said, put down the knife, you would rather die than go to jail. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. If you put down your knife, you'll die.
Did you ever feel fear?
Fear, definitely. Definitely, there's a lot of things to fear, of course. There's a different kind of trauma that you experience from seeing certain things from a young age as well. And I don't think a lot of people really know how to deal with that. So, for instance, someone was stabbed when I was younger and died on the block that I used to live on. We knew him, everyone knew him, he was all cool with everyone. But that was our first time really experiencing death with someone that we know. And we didn't really know how to deal with these type of things. And we didn't know that this kind of desensitized us. And when you're desensitized from seeing someone die, when you grow up bit by bit, you realize that it's so real and accessible to yourself. Once you enter that lifestyle, you can just die leaving your front doorstep, because he died at his door. Literally, he opened the door and got stabbed in the face. And that's how he died. Now, when you're just doing your everyday life, there's a constant fear and anxiety of you don't know what's going to happen next.
So one of the things I do at the Times is I report on life crime, and I always look at the issues and the drivers behind it. The last few years, reporting on knife crime has become a big part of my job.
Yeah.
It's always a shock to me when I go to a scene of a crime or I'm in court and I'm listening to a young person give their name, their date of birth and their address. And I always can sometimes remember what I was doing around the time they were born. If they're born in 2009, 2010. When you were 14, 15, were you aware of what knife crime was? Was it around you? You said that you knew someone who lost their life by a fatal stabbing. How did that affect you?
It just leads back to what I said earlier about the being desensitized to situations like that. From young, it's just something you can't really avoid. I've seen someone get stabbed. I've seen a knife being hidden in the park. This is obviously like when I'm a little boy, young times. But from that age, I've just been desensitized to like, this is basically what life is.
And so I can imagine your friends may have been aware of this, but did you feel that you could ever reach out to someone to tell them what you were doing, an adult?
Definitely not.
Why?
Definitely not. With all my decisions, they haven't really made sense on paper, like at all. Like to myself even, I can't really make sense of it, but there's a reason why I'm doing this. But I just don't know how to explain it to you. And when I come to older people with certain situations or a problem that I may have, instead of trying to reason and help me understand what I'm doing may be wrong or how to do it a bit differently, they go straight to scolding. And that's why I think a lot of young people keep things to themselves, because they just think everyone else is just going to automatically scold them.
Did you ever feel that you could talk to your mum? Because I know you're close.
Yeah, when I was younger, no, definitely not. I thought that anything I would have told her would just break her. She only first ever started seeing things when I started to get arrested, and then I definitely couldn't hide anything anymore.
Can you remember the first time you were caught by the police with a knife?
Yes, I was at college, we're just chilling. I'm with my friends. These times I used to smoke weed. Obviously, I don't smoke weed anymore. So I was smoking weed, everyone's just chilling. And then a police car pulls up. But obviously, while I'm here now, I'm smoking. So, I'm not really thinking straight. My mind's kind of cloudy. So the police has pulled up. And funnily enough, it was a police that I've recognised from before. He's searched me before, and obviously to no avail. So I was taking a piss, you know? You know what I mean? I was like, yo, officer, like, do you not remember me from before? Blah, blah, blah. It was like, nah, we're going to have to detain you for a stop and search. Automatically, my heart dropped because, like, I'm trying to figure out what I have on me. So I've, like, kind of walked away a little bit, checked my pockets and stuff, and, like, pat myself down. And I'm good. I'm saying, yeah, I'm good. Cool. So he searched everyone. It's come to me to search now. I'm saying, you're not going to find anything, blah, blah, blah. And then he's gone to, like, my waistband. And then I felt him feel something. Then he's, like, pulled out the flick knife. It was clipped on my boxers. And I'm just thinking, no way, like, I've just did this to myself. And yeah, man, that was my first time. His heart was racing, all of that.
The weapon was confiscated, and he received the warning. But it wasn't enough to put him off carrying a knife. And when he was 18, he was caught again.
I didn't get so lucky. I definitely knew this time, 100%, I was going to go jail.
His case went to court, where he pleaded guilty to carrying a knife and also admitted possession of cannabis. He spent 3 months in prison, and it was there where he could finally reflect on his actions and the influence of the people he'd been hanging around with.
The time I went jail, I was involved with a gang. And with a gang, you have rivals, of course. And with these rivals, when I got in an altercation with one of them while I was in jail, it kind of got me thinking in a way, like, just because of my loyalty to, a gang, I'm now putting myself in a worse position mentally and obviously physically. I'm risking my own flesh. And those same people who I'm doing this for, they didn't try to reach out to me when I was in jail. They didn't call my mum and see how she's doing, and my close friends see how they're doing, my family. So when I'm now automatically putting myself in a bad situation just for a name that you've come up with, this gang name or whatever, it just never really made sense. Well, it never made sense, but we made it make sense. But obviously now I know it's stupid, so yeah.
Locked up with other gang members who couldn't wait to get out of jail to get back out on the streets, Marcus had an epiphany about the reality of the glamour, or lack of, in gang life.
It's always easier to carry on doing the wrong thing than for you to look at yourself and say, everything you've done to this point is wrong. Because it's easy to point fingers. Everyone points fingers. But when you, point the fingers at yourself and say, I'm in this situation because of myself, a lot of people don't want to do that. And that kind of lifestyle, the street lifestyle, is addictive because you don't have any rules. Of course, there's the street code to an extent, but everything else, we don't care about police. You don't care about other people's opinions. That's just your life, and that's the easiest kind of life to live.
And during that time, what were you saying to yourself? Were you counting down? Were you thinking, trying to plan for the future?
The main things I was really thinking about is how I got into the situation and what I can do to change the situation. And as I already explained before, I got into the situation for my financial situation. And it kind of contradicted why I started what I started, because I was basically in no better situation financially, but I'm in a worse place. So I had to change my morals to realign with what my goals would be. And obviously, it's a lot easier for me to, portray this kind of peaceful lifestyle. Obviously, I'm a Christian, so for me, I've now found peace in those situations. The only thing to look to is someone higher than myself.
But also, I think maybe you telling your story reaches people who haven't lived your life. They don't know what it's like to have the experiences that you've had, or live in the places where you've had. I mean, like the story you told me about knowing somebody who, was fatally stabbed on their doorstep. Yeah. That's stuff that we write about, people read about, but it's different when you know that person. Yeah. Was there a point when you look back where you wish you could have, or wondered if you could have changed your path?
The point where I look back on that could have been the make or break of my whole character was when I first ever sold the first thing I sold. I still remember this day so vividly because if I didn't make that first sale, I would still be able to deter from that lifestyle. But as soon as I saw that £20 note, it kind of thrusted me straight forward. There's no looking back now. That moment right there, that was the moment where if I wanted to change, it would have been then. But after then, there was no going back.
Am I right in thinking that you want to use your experiences and your own story to try and make a difference?
100%.
And how do you envisage doing that?
How I actually envision doing this is sooner or later starting up my own youth club. All these young youths really need is like time to do something. Because if they don't have time doing something, they're going to spend that time doing something else, whether it's positive or negative. So if I can get them interested in like basketball or like football, you know, boxing, something that's benefiting themselves as well, that'd be good.
You've got goals, you've got aspirations,
Yeah.
there are things you want to do. Like you want to open a youth club. I mean, look, we're in a culture and society where there's been about £1 billion worth of cuts to youth services in England and Wales since at least 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in your point of view because it affects your age group. You guys are the future.
Yeah.
If you had a lifeline to the people in power, those who make the decisions, what do you want to say to them?
What I would want to say to them? I think what I would like to say to them is, before you make a decision that affects someone else's life, they should put themselves in a scenario where someone would need to walk with a knife or feel the need to walk with a knife. Because like I said, everyone does everything for a reason. No one just does anything with no cause or anything behind it.
And so I think it's important for me to ask, to what extent do you take some personal responsibility for the decisions that you made?
I take all the responsibility, but I don't at the same time. You can't beat yourself up about the things that you didn't know because you don't know what you know now. So I like to describe myself as a product of my environment. You are what you surround yourself with. And I didn't know any better, but my environment weren't the best. And I did hand select my environment. Well, from a limited amount of options, but I still chose the person I wanted to be without knowing. So I take responsibility for what I've done, but I don't take responsibility of the things that have happened to me and I've had to respond the way I have responded, if that makes sense.
So what does life look like now? So I know you're working.
Yeah.
You're with your family.
Yeah.
Life is different. Tell me what life is like now.
Life is, right now, it's not sunshine and rainbows, of course. No one's life is like that. But because I've gone through so much negativity, it's a lot easier for me to see the positive in what's going on around me. Like, I'm still breathing. I'm not in jail. Those are the two main things that I look at every day as soon as I start my day. Like, I still live with my paranoia, something I can't really get rid of, but that's a pill I had to swallow myself. I chose those decisions and they come with consequences.
Is there anything you want to add?
I think, yeah, all the young boys out there, I think they should definitely listen to their moms. It sounds very childish, but, you know, a lot of situations would have been sidetracked if I would have just paid attention to my mom, because we obviously think, yeah, she's my mom, she loves me, I get it, but she's just a woman, so she can't understand what I'm going through. But my mom, she's taught me a lot of things, and she's got to love that woman with your whole heart, man, and like understand what she's trying to tell you is for the better.
At the start of this podcast, I asked the question, what drives a young person to pick up a knife? And you'd have heard Marcus's story, and I'm aware that it's personal to him. But there are certain themes that I realise affect so many young people in some of the cases I've covered. One of the things I noticed is we always tend to talk about young people, but sometimes it's really hard to speak to young people about these issues. They're sensitive. They can be a little bit cagey about talking about things that they wouldn't ordinarily speak to their parents or close relatives about. Everybody's talking about knife crime at the moment because of Netflix and adolescence. And yes, it's fiction, but this is Marcus's lived reality. And we don't always get those backstories for the people who are affected. Why did you pick up a knife? Why did you need to make money? Why were you desensitized to violence? How did you feel when your neighbour, who everybody loved, was stabbed to death? How did you and your friends cope with it? Those are questions that I often ask myself when I'm sitting in court and listening to testimony, listening to mitigation. You always want to try and join the dots. Sometimes it's clear-cut. Other cases, it's more nuanced. In this case, Marcus is admirably being very candid. Yeah, there's elements of Marcus's life that we've preserved, but that's his voice. This is his story. And so hopefully people will hear it and someone somewhere might take something from it. They might want to make a change in their own life, or they might say, actually, what can we do to prevent more Marcuses from going down the wrong path? We contacted Snapchat about issues raised in this podcast, but they declined to comment. If you've been affected by issues in this episode, we've put some useful links and helplines in the description notes. Thanks to Marcus, Desmond Skyers, and the St Giles Trust. You can read all my reporting, including more from my interview with Marcus, at thetimes.com with a subscription. If you want to hear more about knife crime, then you can listen to an episode I recorded in January looking into knife crime data across England and Wales and why it's on the rise. We'll put a link to that in the episode notes. The Times has also published its final report of the Crime and Justice Commission after a year-long inquiry into the future of the criminal justice system. There are dozens of articles and incisive analysis, including 10 recommendations to improve policing, the courts, and the prison system. The producer was Sam Chantarasak, the executive producer was Fiona Leach, and the sound design and theme composition was by Mal Lasseto. I'm David Woode. Thank you for listening. See you soon.